Nice to see so many people here to listen. This is a little bit unusual talk for me. I grew up in a little village in the southern part of the country, and the geothermal district heating came there 5 years before I was born. And the swimming pool, I remember when I went as an 8-year-old to the swimming pool when it opened, the geothermal swimming pool in the village. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my impressions about the social impact, and I have lived in that social impact my whole life. I have never in my life lived in a house which is not heated by geothermal district heating. So this will be impressions. That means there will be no equation, there will be no algebra, there will be no integral, there will be no matrix, and the three gods of thermal engineering will not be mentioned. The three gods of thermal engineering being exergy, enthalpy, and entropy. So let's go a little bit back in time. Let's go a little bit back into the generation of my father. My father was born into poverty, really, at a farm in southern Iceland. He was born 1905, and as far as I've been able to dig out, then the farm was in the traditional way, having a roof made out of flagstone with turf, with grass on the top, front panel, and dirt floor. Wood was too expensive, and even for the generation of my late father, then wooden floor was simply out of reach. It was too expensive. Well, this is very obvious that at that time, our country was just a dirt-poor third world country. And I did like what we heard from Hörður Arnarsson today, talking about this as an Arctic developing country. Well, maybe a little bit question mark about Arctic, if you compare to Greenland or real Arctic countries, but certainly a developing country. And I'm absolutely certain that the direct use of geothermal energy is one of the main factors in our transition into the 20th century. Of course, we have to remember that we were occupied during the Second World War, having quite a hefty occupation, having as many foreign soldiers in the country as there are male Icelanders. Population was 100,000 at that time, and we had up to 50,000 British or American soldiers in the country. And this is maybe the largest economic support any country can get, because all these soldiers, they have to get something to eat, and you have to build barracks for them and so on. Well, the obligatory photo of Reykjavik before the district heating is here. You will see this over and over again in lectures here. This has been very widespread in use here, showing the smog from the individual coal furnaces in Reykjavik, pretty much covering the city. And you have seen as well the washing in the original natural spring in Laugardalur. I don't know exactly when this photo is made, but it could quite easily be at about the same time as my father came to Reykjavik to learn to be a teacher in 1924. It would not be a big surprise. What do we get from this geothermal? If this is our past, what have we then obtained? What have we got from geothermal? Well, we are heating our homes, including the tap water. We Icelanders know that you don't make coffee from the hot tap unless you like sulfur. Too bad that the modern technology has enabled the hotels to use heat exchangers. So those of you foreigners living in a modern hotel, you don't get the real thing. You don't get sulfury smell in the shower or these things that we enjoy here on a daily basis. We have a considerable part of the electricity generated in the country made from geothermal, the remaining part being hydropower. And we have got this spa and swimming pool culture. Professor Örn Jónsson of the University of Iceland has been looking a little bit into this as really a culture. And I like this because this is pretty strong. When I'm getting overstressed and overworked and tired, and then the best way for me is to start to get out of bed shortly before 6 o'clock in the morning. Go to the morning swimming pool, which all opens at 6:30. And you are standing in a queue at 6:30 in the morning in any weather, minus 10 degrees and snowstorm. Then you still have the queue outside of the swimming pool at 6:30 in the morning. People waiting to get into an open-air swimming pool under these circumstances. You do your swimming, and a little bit more about that later. Greenhouses, well, we are enjoying from the greenhouses. We have Icelandic tomatoes for the whole year, and this means that there is quite a lot of produce that we are getting from geothermal, which tastes a wee bit differently, justifying the huge price difference. It's more expensive than the imported, but the taste is not comparable. Aquaculture has not been a major factor. Industrial use is as well, but it's not much. If you buy licorice from the company Freya, you can get this in the shops here, little pieces of licorice, then this licorice is dried by geothermal. When they extrude the licorice candies, then they dry them afterwards, and that's done by geothermal here. So these are the main items. For the social, well, heating is so cheap that there is no need to worry. The usual Icelander has no idea what he is paying. He simply doesn't know. Ask him what he is paying for car insurance, and he will tell you to the last penny what he is paying. You will know that pretty exactly. Indoor temperature is high. Well, I peeked on the meter in my home this morning, and it was standing at 24, which is a pretty usual practice. I'm getting older as well. Older people tend to have higher indoor temperature. The control is wasteful. The only way an Icelander knows to control the indoor temperature is by opening the windows, which is maybe not energy optimal, but is very much the reality. And another thing is to keep the windows slightly open all the time, getting nice and cold air into the house, which for those of you that have looked into the Mollier diagram will know will contain very little mass ratio of water and will result in air humidity of some 20% during a good winter day in your home. And you see that on your furniture when it starts cracking, or when you catch the typical cold because of too dry air. Many have a hot pot in the backyard, being able to take a little dip after work. And we have migration towards the geothermally heated areas in the country. Here comes the error I know of in my presentation. Well, electricity for heating of buildings is subventioned by the government, is considered to be very expensive here, but it's still not high enough to justify heat pumps. It's very difficult to prove the economics of heat pumps because electricity for heating is too cheap for that. And here is the error. I made a Google search for jöfnun húshitunarkostnaðar, which is a political issue in Iceland to even out the heating cost of the buildings. And it gave 13,000 hits. I put in one too many zeros, but getting 13,000 hits tells how much issue this is for those Icelanders not living on the geothermal district heating areas. And remember that it's only 10% of the buildings that are not heated by geothermal. And this tells us well how important this is for these 10% that are not enjoying geothermal heat. Well, Snorri did start this. He wrote pretty many interesting things. We know the Nordic mythology because of him. And he was, as far as I understand, he was killed here in this pathway to his nice pool in Reykholt. Then nothing happens for quite a while, and this is basically because there was no technology to do the heat exchange between the indoor air and the water. Because if you put an open channel with 60 or 80 degrees hot water through one of these torf huts that you saw on my first slide, you will simply get a Turkish bath. Everything will be filled with humidity and steam, and it's not possible. So heating of buildings is starting pretty late, and district heating in Reykjavik starts 1930. This is in my village in Selfoss. My father built a house and he got the district heating into the house 1949. And this is how the system looks. We have the geothermal water coming into the house through a strainer, through a volume meter counting the number of cubic meters that the building uses. Then we have a manual control valve, which is the supply to the radiators. And this manual control valve is the only single control equipment in the house. When it got cold inside, my mother used to go down into the cellar and open this in 60 degrees sections of a turn. And when things got hot, then simply just quick down into the cellar and turn the control valve a wee bit. And then the tap water is taken just out of the geothermal supply to the taps and shower. Crazy, simple. Maybe the biggest surprise is that this system is running happily today. No change, it's just like this. I took the photos 2005. My father has passed away, family has sold the house, but this is still running happily. Resulting in this, which is another photo that you will see on very many slides here, because when we have to brag a little bit and show our importance in the world, then we usually take a clean and nice photo of Reykjavík in some way. Heating cost, want to mention that a little bit. This is my home. This is a house having around 200 square meters floor area. The heated volume is around 600 cubic meters. The suburb of Reykjavík, wooden house, insulated according to the standard of the time, and this was built early 80s, so it's not that old really. But this is a single family house on a single level, so heat loss is relatively high. And this is my invoice that I got from Reykjavík Energy just a while ago. This is for the month of April, and they are using estimation. And they estimate that I had used 54 cubic meters of water during the month of April. And this estimate is corrected once a year by readings of the meters. And this is surprisingly accurate. Number crazy nerds like me, I went into that, and I made number crunching and checking and correlations, and this is surprisingly accurate. Well, there is a fixed price, fixed charge for the meter and for the installation, and then I am getting 122 Icelandic kronur per cubic meter, which is roughly exactly $1 US. And then you can do the maths. If I'm paying roughly $1 for a cubic meter, and if I'm cooling the water roughly 40 degrees, then I'm getting something like close to 50 kilowatt hours out of that cubic meter. So this is something like 2 or 2.5 US cents per kilowatt hour. If I have a lousy system and I'm a bad consumer, then I pay more because I get less delta T of my water. If I have a nice and good system, I get cheaper heating. So by selling the cubic meters, you get an incentive for the consumer to behave well and have a well-designed, effective system. And this is for the month of April, 63 euros or 70 US dollars that I've been paying. Get this into relation. The largest newspaper here is 5,600 a month, 40 euros or 45 US dollars. Swimming pools has been done since settlement. We have stories in the sagas of bathing, and Laug is the washing place, the bathing place, and it's in place names all over. This is Landmanna Laugar. And after a few days of hiking in the highlands, after going to Þeistareykir for ptarmigan, and you get back cold, sweaty, and you find a pool, then you use that pool directly. No hesitation. Reykjanes in the southwest is here. Salt was produced there by boiling seawater by geothermal. Earlier, you can see the place here. Boarding school was built in 1934. The boarding schools were typically built where there was geothermal, built all around the country in the 30s, and then they closed down later. The road connection came around 1950. Until that, there was no road connection. So the boarding school was here quite a few years. having the only transport possibility through the harbor and by boat. Well, but they made a swimming pool in 1853. And they were teaching swimming from 1853. And you can still see the old swimming pool, which was simply that they made a little turf wall around a natural spring, and then later a concrete wall, and this is still standing like this. And the swimming pool now is at the boarding school. It used to be the longest swimming pool in the country. This has a fantastic temperature control system. This is the hot end, and this is the cold end. There is no chlorine, so you get a nice and beautiful layer of algae on the walls. And it's a little bit of fight with the authorities if this is legal to offer this for tourists or not. But I can promise you this is a fantastic place, and this tells the simple story of simple life with beautiful geothermal utilization. Swimming pools today are very different. 170 swimming pools in the country. I think there are only 18 here in Reykjavík, so we have around 10,000 inhabitants for each swimming pool, whereas countrywide the ratio is lower, around 3,000 people per pool. The average citizen is going 15 times a year. I'm going more frequently. It's more frequently that I'm stressed and overworked and can't sleep. This is certainly a big part of the quality of life. And you get the hot pot. It's the place for gossip. This would be Örlygshöfn in the Vesturbæjarlaug in the western part of the city, and this was my place in that pot. Discussion every morning at the same time, and same thing said by all the speakers all the time. Everything is going to hell, and it was a lot better when I was a young man. The future. We may have built the last geothermal plant in Iceland. There are ideas of making the center of the country a national park, and the pressure on preserving the geothermal areas is growing very steadily. That means that the home market for the geothermal industry will disappear. It will go away. That means that what is left is just maintenance and operational side of the existing power plants. There is not much room for expansion in the district heating business. We have already 90% of the buildings on geothermal district heating, and there is not much room for improvement there. This means I have to look for work abroad. And this is what the geothermal industry here has to start focusing on. And this is why a conference like this is so hugely important for the country. We have to start to look outside of our easy home market and go into the big, difficult world. I made a few thoughts for Iceland without geothermal. And I run tests on this for family and friends. And my family and friends is nerds like me, as you could expect. Hobbies are hiking in the highlands. It's fishing in the highlands. I have to talk to Jóna because he did not mention the ptarmigan in the Þeistareykir area. It's a fantastic ptarmigan hunting ground, and so on. And what I got from family and friends was an angry response. People got angry at me. So I'm going to run through these slides and see if I get out of this room alive. Let's see. We would have to heat the buildings with electricity if we didn't have geothermal. Or we would then probably have to go over to the ground source heat pumps for the buildings, which will mean investment of the order of magnitude of $30,000 per installation. And $30,000 installation means that your resulting capital cost is roughly 10% of that if you take depreciation and interest and so on into account. That's $360,000 a year. That's about $30,000 a month in capital cost. That's higher than the geothermal bill and the electricity bill together for most people here in the country. The heating load is seasonal, and it's low utilization factor. Even if the utilization factor here is higher than almost anywhere else in the world, then it's still low, 40% or something like that. This means that we will have rise of price of the electricity, and we will have to go down to the standard European 19 degrees centigrade indoor temperature. So sale of pullovers will increase in the country, and swimming pool culture will disappear. All the hydropower power plants in the country combined are not sufficient to heat the buildings heated by geothermal if we have direct electric heating. They are not sufficient. So that means we would have to use all the hydroelectricity we have during winter, and the rest during summer is just surplus, which is pretty much unsellable. If we go into ground source heat pumps, we could reduce the electricity needed for heating of the buildings to something like half of the capacity of the hydro plants that we have in the country now today. And you can just guess what is the next step. Fossil fuel-fired power plants. There is no way around that. Iceland without geothermal means a coal-fired cogeneration plant for Reykjavík. Geldinganes is ideal. Geldinganes is a little island here which has a little land connection, and Geldinganes has, it's deep, it's relatively deep, so that you can quite easily build a quay and get the coal ships towards the islands, and you have space for a coal depot on the island. That would produce heat during winter to heat the city, and because we would use cogeneration, I'm going to break my promise. You will take the nice best exergy out of the flue gas from the boilers, and you will use that for production of electricity. So exergy has been mentioned once. This is map of Reykjavík. We are here in Harpa. This is Geldinganes, and then I went out there and I took a photo, and this is just roughly the view of the photo. And you can see here this island of Geldinganes. We would get the power plant roughly here. We would have stacks around 120 meters high to try to reduce the downfall of ash into the built areas. And you can see here Harpa is roughly here. You can see Reykjavík here in distance. And this is the equivalent. This is Wuppertal Elberfeld in Germany. This is a plant having around 100 megawatt electrical and 200 for heating. And we would play a little bit with that and try to increase the heating fraction by a little bit different design of the Speisewasservorwärmer, internal heat exchangers in the plant. It can be done fiddling with that. We need around 180 megawatts of electricity, and we need something like 700-800 megawatts to heat the buildings. So 2 plants of that kind was what we would have as a target in Geldinganes. Coal is, of course, not shown. I'm guessing that we would need something like 400 meter wide, 800 meter long, and 12 meter thick coal depot for the plant, because we would probably have to have more or less coal for a full winter of operation. Okay, I think I made the point what the future is without geothermal. I think you can understand how irritated my family was when seeing this. For an Icelander to look out of the window and see a coal-fired power plant with a stack is a sacrilege. This is something you don't do in this country. Okay, how can I explain then, on the last slide, the importance of geothermal? You have noted that there is not a single exact figure in my presentation. There is no exact number given. And I can go, how no it is to argue with engineers. I say 1,800 kilos per capita. Well, it may be 1,700 or it may be 2,000, I don't care. It's roughly that the heating with oil would need some 1,800 kilos per capita, which we take now from geothermal. This means that geothermal is saving us oil, which is corresponding to a family car driven around 18,000 kilometers a year per capita, not per family, per capita, counting the elderly and infants as well. This is one way of seeing this. And then take another example. And again, no exact figures. If we take what Reykjavik Energy is selling here, and took the figure of 75 million cubic meters, it is a bit higher, 80, 82, 83, I think it is today. 75 is a good number. Put it in a swimming pool. Assume that the swimming pool is 1 meter deep and 30 meter wide. How long would it be? How many meters? It would be 2,500 kilometers. This nice little swimming pool would go from here to the Brandenburg Gate. The Brandenburg Gate would be inside. If you went from the Brandenburg Gate to the end, you would have to swim quite a while. You can see that this is going pretty much over Zittau, over the three countries corner between Czechia, Poland, and Germany. We are going through my old town in Karlsruhe. We are going south of Paris. La Coruña, I think, in Spain is here. And on the west side, we don't quite make it. It's just into Newfoundland and Labrador. But I think that this stresses quite well the point that geothermal is hugely important to us and has a big influence on our lives. And the biggest proof of that is the angry response of family and friends when I said coal-fired power plant in Geldinganes. And the answer was typically, what? Are you crazy? And that's what I have to say to you about the social impact. Thank you very much.